at first it is scary, but you eventually get to the point where like, oh my gosh, if people knew how simple this was, everyone would be doing this. So hopefully they don't find out how simple it is, because it generally comes down to making those good offers and following up repeatedly and having some type of sales process. But that was the first phase, and along the way, the irony was as soon as things really started taking off for me, I had my anxiety attacks. And that was because I was this hypocritical person who was a binge drinker on the weekends and then, goody boy two shoes, personal trainer Monday through Saturday. And then Saturday afternoon, I'd end up at a Blue Jays game or a hockey game or something, drinking and then drinking till 4 o'clock Sunday morning. And I think mentally that caught up with me. In addition to a few other things, being an introverted type of person, I didn't journal. I didn't know about these tools, meditation and all that sort of stuff that allowed me to process my thoughts a little bit better. And so the way that I describe it is I was like trying to pound, 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5 pound bag. And eventually that kind of blows up in your face. And it did on January 1st of 2006. I went to the emergency room, walked in, said I was having a heart attack because that's what I thought was happening. And that was the first of two pretty severe anxiety attacks that I had that then set me down a path to figuring myself out. And then that's when the productivity and the systems and the habits all kicked in because I knew the way that I was living before that couldn't continue.
Yeah, on the anxiety stuff I can relate to. So I've had anxiety really bad since I was probably like 6. I probably had my first anxiety attack, and then it went away for majority of my life, and it came back in like my late 20s, 28, 29 years old. So for some people who have anxiety, which I'm sure is a lot of our listeners, what can you give for some tips that when you were going through that, like maybe a couple tips that can get you out the mud? Because there's so many different phases with anxiety, but I know so many people who are just stuck in this rut and they just need like that first step out into like, the light to kind of see that there's a path forward. Do you have any suggestions or tips for those
Yeah,
folks?
absolutely. Well, I mean, one of the most important things that I did was I committed. I
Yeah.
committed to turning over every rock. I was not going to take any pills for it. I wasn't going to go to the doctor and ask for medication. I was determined to figure it out. Now, it was a painful experience because the second anxiety attack that I had was the middle of March of 2006, and it lasted for 6 weeks. So for every waking minute, and I could only sleep a few hours at night, I felt like I was having a heart attack. My chest was tight, my heart rate was elevated, I was tingling from the top of my head to the end of my fingertips. It was pretty brutal. And even I would try and go to the gym and I couldn't concentrate. But I realized that something had to change. And one of the things that I learned along the way that I think will be really helpful is a physiological change that most people can do immediately. And this is great for people that are stressed out and not, fully anxious, but just breathing properly was one of the key elements for me getting through it. So if you're stuck in traffic and you're yelling at the person in front of you, you're stressed out and angry. If you flip that and just do something like box breathing, 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, 4 seconds out, hold the exhale out for 4 seconds and repeat that cycle. It calms down your nervous system. And for people with anxiety, that same thing will be very helpful. I had to learn what I was doing. The mistake that I was making that made my anxiety worse was because I spent a lot of time on the computer, I was hunched over. And when you're hunched over, you can't exhale fully and you end up having these short, shallow breaths, which is like hyperventilating. And that's good if you're going into a UFC cage match and you need to get hyped up for it. But on a day-to-day basis, breathing like that all the time is not very good. So learning how to do the classic yoga belly breathing was essential for me to learn. And I tried all these things. I did this thing called Qigong, yoga, meditation, Tai Chi classes. I tried everything. I hated them all, but I was turning over every rock. And when I finally figured out this breathing aspect, in the next few months, there was always like the anxiety was like kind of coming back. And if I would flip into that breathing, and it was very difficult at first, but eventually that was one of the major tools that allowed me to overcome it. In addition to some journaling and a lot more gratitude, because it's very difficult to be grateful and very difficult to be generous, giving and helping other people. It's almost impossible to be helping another person and feel anxious, whether that's helping at a soup kitchen or whether that's helping answer a question to somebody on the internet. Anytime I did something that was outward generosity and helping, I noticed that my body calm down. And that was a huge change for me.